What episode is this?
Episode 39.
I'm glad you're keeping track of this, Greg, because I never know what the number is.
I honestly don't know why I remembered. But yeah, I know it's episode 39.
Yeah, all right.
If I'm wrong, oh well.
It doesn't matter. There's no consequences.
Now episode 39.
Exactly, yeah.
So be it.
That's right. One of those episodes.
It's a number. What is numbers anyway? Math is made up. It's not real.
That's right. It's like birds.
Did you ever hear the origin of the birds aren't real thing?
No.
It's really dumb. It's just someone came up with a sign and like went to a protest and like stuck it up, and then like it caught on.
It just became a meme.
Yeah.
Went viral.
For some reason, like when I heard it was like an NPR thing, I thought it was gonna be more involved. It was just, and like they were interviewing the guy, and he's like, "Yeah, I was just goofing around." Like,
doesn't take much.
No.
It's usually the best memes are the ones that are unintentional.
Mm-hmm.
They just kind of happen naturally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Talking about memes. Bunch of old guys sitting around talking about memes.
This is the episode where we just talk about memes and how great the sound design and soundtrack is for Andor.
Holy shit.
Is it good? I haven't seen it yet.
It's fucking amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, the show itself is also, I put it out there, I think it's the best thing since the original trilogy. It's as of this recording, it's not done yet. So who knows if they're going to stick the landing. Like, they could still fuck it up between now and the end. But so far, every moment's been captivating. The stories have been great. And yeah, the sound, astounding.
Yeah.
It's live action, not animated?
Live action.
Okay. Yeah.
I think we're up to, today episode 11 releases tonight at some point. But yeah, we're up to episode 10. Sound design, pretty excellent. And the soundtrack too. A lot of classical sci-fi vibes, you know.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
But not cliche.
No.
It has that vibe, but without just being, you know, a Vangelis ripoff or Forbidden Planet. You know, like it has its own very distinctive take on it.
It's always weird to see something Star Wars related without John Williams blasting horns in your face.
Absolutely.
But it works.
Yeah. This has been like kind of under the radar. Like, not, you know, maybe people are starting to talk about it now. But like when it started, I just was like, oh shit, Disney Plus is telling me something's on.
I mean, I'm guilty of that too. I ignored it up until I think the 6th episode. And finally I was like, yeah, let's see what this is all about. And then like I binged the first 6 and I was like immediately hooked.
Which is weird because like Mandalorian was all you heard about for a while when that came out.
That was because of Baby Yoda.
Yeah.
I think nobody would have, not nearly as many people would have given a shit if it wasn't for Baby Yoda memes.
Yeah.
But like Obi-Wan was basically unwatchable, and there was a lot of hype around that. I remember even being kind of excited for it.
I didn't see it.
It was trash.
It was really bad. I mean, even just like the idea of like, I'm going to sit around and just watch sexy Ewan McGregor, which should be enough. That's been enough in the past. It was so boring that even him in that weird Obi-Wan affected voice thing that he does was not enough to carry it.
Yeah. But
Obi-Wan, a better show.
Oh, I see what you did there.
See you guys tomorrow.
Yeah, I'm sorry, everyone. And that wraps up episode 39.
Nick has the high ground. So who wants to kick it off?
Elephant in the room. What is all that fucking shit over there?
All right. So last time, I didn't get the memo that we were doing show and tell. And so do you ever have like the nightmare of it's the last day of a class and it's the final and you haven't gone to any classes and you're the only one who hasn't prepared? That was my last episode.
And you're naked.
I'm naked. And I walk into Greg's house last time naked. And you both have things for show and tell. And I've got like mediocre pumpkin beer. Like I'm just like, what? This is a nightmare. This is a nightmare come true. And so I vowed I'm not going to let that happen again. And maybe I went a little overboard. This is a lot of stuff.
That's appropriate.
I think so. Yeah. I'm making up for some for lost opportunity there. So what we got here is a black hole case with a lot of chaos devices. Specifically the Leibniz. I think that's right.
Yeah.
binary subsystem. I sort of alluded to it in the past episodes that I've been getting fired up for it. But I'm basically all in on the system. I think it's amazing. So much so that over here, I've built my own module to tie into that subsystem. So buckle in. My idea was I was going to give you kind of an overview of the system itself. I don't think a lot of people are using it. I think it's a little bit of a under the radar, like, the niche of the niche of the niche.
Yeah.
Sort of section. So I was going to start with that and then explain what I've added to it. So first off, Dresno, arguably the main driver for the subsystem. It starts with an ADC converting signal, or if you got nothing plugged in, or no initial state, just an offset on the Dresno, turns that into 8 gates.
Mm-hmm.
Those gates represent most to least significant bits in a 8-bit binary system, 0 to 256, unsigned. And there's a little readout here that shows you, going from top to bottom, most significant, the 8th bit, all the way down to the least significant, the first bit. It has an internal clock, and with each of those clocks, you get an updated representation that gets spit out into each of these gates. And it takes a clock in, so you can even slow that down. But without an external clock, it's at a brisk 2 megahertz. So it's it's ultrasonic. Based on what you put into it, either through this input jack or in the back, there is a 10-pin ribbon cable that it shares data around through the subsystem that gets sent to the ADC, which then generates these gates. You can override what's going in through the ribbon cable with this input jack here. Then there is the output is these gates. There's also a DAC, digital analog converter, and if you notice here, there's also a sort of mirror of inputs. You can override any bit by sending voltage into these, and they correspond to, this is the most significant at the top, least significant at the bottom. These are overrides for what the ADC itself would generate. At this point, are there any questions?
I've tried to read up on these modules. It confused me then, but I'm confused now.
So that's what I'm hoping to alleviate.
Okay. No, I think it's one of those things that I would just have to see you play with in real time or an audio demo.
It's interesting because the audio effect of this is, at least from my perspective, the least interesting part of the system. Because it basically just does analog to digital and then digital to...
Well, I didn't necessarily mean as an effect, but just demonstrating what it does.
Well, I will show you right now.
Okay.
So I will... okay, wait, hold on, let me explain. To the listener, right now I've got a clock coming in from the Evaton clocks. It works best with a square wave, and that module is just square wave, so it works great for this. And right now it's just taking in, you can see it sort of wiggling around a little bit there, because it's just input signal from the Moskva sequencers, which isn't very interesting. But what I'm going to do...
It's getting that signal from where?
Like
I don't see you actually plugged in.
It's behind the panel, and that's what's
It's all
interesting.
behind the scenes.
Yes, see this cable sticking out over here?
I see that.
That's the 10-pin cable that all of the subsystems that participate in Leibniz from they all have an input and an output connector for this.
Okay.
So you chain them along, and they basically send their that binary data to the next module. And about half of them so far have this link button. And what the link does, it says, I'm going to take the data that's coming in as it's been processed. This is, I'm going to do my own thing. If you unlink it, you're going to do your own thing. You have to pick how you want to chain them, because it can have an effect on the downstream modules.
So wait, by linking, you mean they're all sharing the same stream of data?
It's linking with the incoming signal.
Oh, okay.
And then what comes next, it has an output, and it passes along to the next module.
So it's literally serial.
Yes, exactly. Thank you. That's a much more concise way of putting it. It is literally serial. Now, it can be like a token ring network where it circles back in on itself. Only a couple of modules only have an input or an output. All the rest of them have inputs and outputs, so you can basically have them in a circle. And this is a slight diversion. Someone out there, and I just saw this on YouTube a little while ago, created a patch bay of these 10-pin connectors to surface them all so that you can
oh, that's cool.
like you can just do it on your modular.
Yeah.
Whoever that is, bravo, that's a brilliant idea. So yeah, what I'm doing now is I'm patching from a Dixie an LFO into here. And hopefully this illustrates a little bit better. One of the things that I think is really interesting about this system, this is a very simple example. It's just a sine wave going into there with a reduced clock. And as you can see, the ADC is taking that sine wave, turning it in. These are just gates that are going to be coming out of here.
Mm-hmm.
There's also this offset because it's designed to be unipolar, but anything above halfway allows you to get the bipolars and process a bipolar signal and get the full range of it. Otherwise, you're only going to get the lower bits. And each of these lights here, there's a gate coming out corresponding for each of these.
Yeah. So it's taking that LFO and deriving a gate based on its interpretation of that LFO.
Exactly.
Outputting it to those jacks. And
it can be any signal. Like LFO, I just did this for this presentation, but you can send it from any signal coming in is going to have this, and then it gets turned into these series of gates. I'm at patching in here. I'm overriding one of the bits with another output from the clocks, and what had previously been the most significant bit was not being hit, is now being supplemented by this external signal.
Is that external signal like an offset, or is it just filling in the range that didn't exist in the other signal?
It's overriding whatever the ADC, whatever turn that gate had been determined. It's saying ignore the ADC. This overrides that value.
Okay.
And it's cool for stuff like this because this is principally how I've been using it, or how I've been thinking about using it, is as a gate sequencer, coming up with a different way to use it. But putting a bunch of these in, if you have an audio signal coming in, just really wrecks that bit crushing effect in a really interesting sort of tearing way.
Oh, I was going to say, because at first I was like, oh, that would almost be useless, or there's some specific like effect that it has on the audio, because it would be so fast that it would be like, what gates are you?
Exactly. This is by and large what the Dresno performs. The one that I usually have following it is the Gina, the JENA, which and it also connects by this 10-pin ribbon cable, and it is a wavetable lookup. So it takes that value in, transposes it into an offset and a lookup on a lookup table, gets that, and then replaces with that waveform.
Oh, interesting. So you're kind of scanning through this wave table.
Exactly. Yes.
Huh. Okay, I didn't understand what that did until you said that. Okay.
That one is really interesting with audio. And then the other one I have is the Erfort, which takes all of this data and uses it as a binary bit accumulator.
Oh, okay.
Again, I'll take a break. Is there any other questions?
No, I think I get it a little more now than I did before, for sure.
The documentation's good, but I had to read it like a dozen times.
Yeah.
And then play with it and then go back and read the documentation again. It did take me a little while to grok. And then, so I had a little bit of time on my hands. I was like, oh, it'd be really cool if there was an idea for something that would be cool to add to the system. So, and I was like, well, obviously the data that's being sent around in this cable, why don't I just read what's coming out of that cable and reverse engineer it and make my own module, which I did.
So for our listeners, there is a 10-pin cable coming out of this Blackhole case into a weird-ass little box with a breadboard and what looks like an Arduino and a shit ton of cables.
That is exactly what it is.
Yeah, I guess we could post pictures on our Instagram and
that'd
Discord.
That'd be a good thing right there.
I don't know how excited XAOC Devices is about me doing this. This is not open source, and I had to basically sit there with an oscilloscope and a meter and figure out what each pin does and experiment and
hack the planet.
I hacked the planet. I did. And yeah, so I made an Arduino code here that's taking in the signal. And as you can see, the first step was just making sure that I was replicating it, the data correctly. And then I've added 3 outputs, and it is the 4 most significant bits. If more of them are on, this sends out a gate. If more of them are off, it's low. But because there's 4, there's a chance for ties. So I have a little toggle here for tiebreaker. Either it's going to take whatever the state of the 8th most significant bit is, or there's an input jack here that I have. I'm going to read an external signal in and use that for the tiebreaker.
Oh, yeah. That's cool.
And so I've got that same logic for the least 4 significant bits, and then this top jack here is for all 8 of the bits.
Is it getting power from that 10-pin cable too, or are you powering it another way?
So it's powered. The Arduino is powered by USB. This is there's a again, I don't know how cool Chaos is going to be about me sort of spilling this, but one of the pins is ground. One of them is a clock signal, whatever either the internal clock or whatever the external clock is that's coming over one of the wires, and then the other 8 wires represent 1 through 8 bits. It seems like the design is, when you get a clock signal, you read the state of all of those bits, and then you replicate the state from there.
Makes sense. So that's what the 2 megahertz clock is. That's doing all the work in between those, during those cycles.
Right. If you have no external clock plugged in. If you plug in an external clock.
Oh, yeah, that's still weird.
Yeah, so
that's so weird to me. So you're slowing down the computation with the external signal.
Exactly.
That's
and you can see
strange thing.
The external signal is still coming in, but the speed of the conversion is tied to the clock. And so that's also why you're getting a somewhat irregular pattern, is because the phase of the incoming sine wave is faster than the clock.
So you have the signal affecting it itself, and then the clock affecting the interpretation of the signal. That's pretty wild.
Yep.
Okay.
And it's also reflected over here in the module that I made. You can see these lights match up with that, because on the 10-pin ribbon, that clock is shared. That's the clock that's getting passed through the binary subsystem from Dresno.
Fuck yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I guess this is like a lot of explanation and not a lot of context. One of the really interesting things, and one of the things I really like about it, is I'm getting this seemingly chaotic gate pattern happening, but because it's coming from a regular signal, it's repeating fairly regularly. It's, depending on the signal you send it, it might take 8 bars or a pretty long time for that for it to repeat, but this is sort of like repeating chaos, or it's not entirely stochastic.
Right.
So
yeah,
I'm a huge fan, and I hope they make more modules. I don't know if I can modulify the thing that I made.
Why not?
Do it.
I mean, I honestly don't know what the licensing for it is.
Oh,
fuck 'em.
Fuck them.
And like, if I did, I probably would not go with Arduino. Was just, this was the fastest way to do this. I would probably come up with something, a different hardware topography in order to do this. So it would be a lot more work to get there. But again, like I said at the beginning, this is niche of a niche of a niche of a niche. If I do this, there might be 5 people on Earth that want to buy it.
That'd be cool to do a limited run, though.
Yeah,
that would be, yeah.
Like I said before, like that was my first IntelliGel module, was when he did I believe it was the Livewire Vulkan expander. I think it was the Vulkan, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and like there wasn't a whole lot of people out there at the time that had like the Vulkan modulator, you know what I mean? Or willing to spend a lot of money on something that was like as much as the actual module just to expand upon it. But like, I love that thing. You know what I mean? And it felt cool having something that was like, I don't know, like an underground release to expand upon something. You know what I mean? I was like, this is neat. But,
and this functionality of this ADC and DAC conversion is not that prevalent in Eurorack, but even in the synth world in general. I was talking to a friend of the podcast, Ryan. He might make music. I've never asked. But it reminded him of the G2 modular has an ADC conversion and a DA converter.
That's dead on.
Yeah, that reminded him of this. And I ended up looking it up. He sent me the documentation for it. I was like, yeah, it's very comparable to this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's not much they could bitch about. You're just reading pins from a signal from pins on a module.
Yeah.
It's not like there's anything.
It's not like you're trying to market it as a Chaos Devices module.
Right, yeah.
I guess.
Or they could have put some signature on the start or something that you would have had to figure out.
Right.
Block
But
that
it's
if they-
obvious that I love them, and I don't want them to be mad at me.
Right. This is a work of passion.
Exactly.
Yeah, I would think that
Passion
they would be
project.
super psyched about this. Like, that's pretty fucking cool.
And yeah, like I said, it was also like a project I took on. I wanted to see if I could do it, but this was super fun. Like there were definitely times where I'm like, I'm not getting this at all. I'm like clearly on the wrong track and like almost gave up. And then 4 a.m. was like,
Persevered.
well, mostly I just woke up in like a fever sweat and go, wait, maybe it's this, and then ran downstairs and like got the scope and shit out. And I assume my partner thinks I've gone even crazier than usual.
So what do you want to do with it next? Like, what's the next step?
So I mean,
Like, even idea-wise, not even necessarily with that.
that's a good question because like this module probably is as extended as it can get. You know, like
Yeah.
there's I'm starting to think in different ways about like you've got all of this data coming in this weird way. What can you do with it? And like I think some of the low hanging fruit has been done by Chaos Devices, and even if I don't turn this into a module, I like the idea of having, you know, maybe even like a board off to the side or like a project box
No
off to
doubt.
the side where I just have all the crazy things that I'm doing with it. And I'm just, you know, and I can keep adding to it.
Yeah, just being able to manipulate the stream at that low of a
Right.
level. That's pretty interesting in itself.
Exactly.
You know? What if you could like do some like live coding against it somehow, you know, or something like that,
Oh, that would be cool.
where you're like manipulating the stream in real time somehow.
That's a really interesting idea. Like it would be difficult with Arduino because you have to upload
Oh, true.
stuff, but that wouldn't prohibit you from connecting a keyboard to it and then having these sort of like free variables or like basically accessing memory as it's coming in.
So you have other pins you could do things with that could affect
Exactly.
the program.
Right. So this is coming in, the Arduino's circling around. And so instead of updating the core program, the program itself is designed to incorporate these new inputs and behave on them accordingly. That's a fucking brilliant idea. I'm putting it here right now. Probably going to steal that.
Yeah, please do. That
It's
would
an
be
awesome
cool to
idea.
see. That's crazy. How long you've been cracking at this for like 3 months or something? Like that?
It's been about June and it's November. So
Oh, wow.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it took well over a month just to reverse engineer these pins and figure out how they work. And then also, you know, I've got a pretty good understanding of electronics, but I didn't go to school for it. So a lot of it was I think I need to put a resistor here. Oh no, that didn't work. You know,
Yeah,
like, somebody who is
That'd be
much
me.
better at that sort of low level electronics design would probably laugh and go, I could have hammered that out in a couple of hours. It took me a long time to
Sure.
get to the point where I have, you know, the lights blinking, the even the jacks. Yeah, something else I want to mention too. I had never hooked up or read or sent data to a jack before, and I end up using the mutable instruments schematics. And they work perfectly.
No shit.
Yeah, so there was inputs and output jack schematics, and it worked like a charm. And it even diode protected from being plugged in the wrong way.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so
Amelie saves the day.
Yeah,
exactly.
Beautiful.
Yeah,
To
like,
the rescue once more.
Absolutely.
Emily or Amelie?
I say Emily, but
Okay.
I think
think that's
Amelie would be with an A,
Yeah,
like the movie.
You're right. You're right. Pretty sick, dude.
yeah, thank you.
Cool stuff.
Very excited.
I love that case.
Yeah, the case is rad.
Yeah, so I ran out of project boxes, and I've got a slight
I like
problem.
both those cases.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, this is this one is because I've got a problem every time I go to like Goodwill or a thrift store and there's just some old box. I'm like, oh shit, it's like $1. I'm like, I'm gonna put something in that. This was like a clarinet case that I ripped everything out. This is Blackhole cases. I think they're from Ohio. I just sort of happened upon them like a couple years ago looking for a case, and all of their stuff is this like textured.
Yeah, I remember you speaking highly of it in
Yeah.
a previous episode, but I don't think I've ever seen the actual case that you were talking about.
Yeah.
No,
Until
I
now.
probably never brought it
Looks
around.
pretty cool. And
Yeah.
it came with those little stands that it's on?
Oh, it came
Or
with
you
these
find it-
feet. No, the stands were
Okay.
a random perfect circuit like sale. They were like $5,
Damn.
and they
Works
like
perfect.
fit
Yeah, they
perfectly.
say they work pretty well.
So I'm probably gonna, if I ever need to get another case, I'm gonna go to this because it just looks like old scientific equipment.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm probably gonna, if I ever need to get another case, I'm gonna go to this because it just looks like old scientific equipment. So I'm probably gonna, if I ever need to get another case, I'm gonna go to this because it just looks like old scientific equipment. I love it.
It does. At first, I thought it was something you constructed, but then I was like, no, if they were to build that, it would look much more haggard.
I should be insulted, but I'm not. You are 100% correct.
He wouldn't use this pristine Tolex.
Nah.
Those angles wouldn't be so right.
He would have peeled the leather from like an 80-year-old couch.
It would look older and it would
have
more
cat
green,
scratches in it
probably.
and some mold patches. Yes.
That is true. Yeah, absolutely.
That rhymed.
What?
Cat scratches and mold patches.
Oh, shit.
Damn.
It's
Put that in
episode
rhyme.
title.
That's the new episode title. Yeah.
What does that have to do with? No, very little.
It's
Don't worry about it. Listen and find out.
Exactly.
And subscribe to our Patreon.
Yeah. If you tell us, I'll email you a pencil. No, we have stickers and rolling papers that I won't send you.
Well, now that we've dipped into the underbelly of modular, you want to talk about something that's very mainstream, maybe influencer level?
Oh,
I don't know who you might be talking about.
I'm talking about Endorphin's collaboration with Andrew. Oh, fuck.
Wang.
Wang. I always want to say Wang because it's an H, but
Right.
I'm just stupid. Andrew Wang for Ghost. We joked about it in the past, and we also made the joke that eventually one of us would end up with one.
Yeah.
Guess who did? It was me.
shocked.
You know what though? It's funny. I was genuinely shocked.
I was too.
Like when you said
I
you
was
got
shocked at
one,
myself.
I was like, holy shit, you did it.
I tried to take a step back,
Mhm.
and I was like, I'm going to look at this. You know, I'm going to ignore the influencer name that's all over it. I'm going to ignore the fact that he is indeed an influencer and not a dark techno producer who's trying to collaborate for a dark techno module. I'm just
Mhm.
going to ignore all this.
Right.
I'm going to ignore the fact that Endorphins has a track record of releasing buggy, noisy modules. And I'm going to have an open mind and give it a fair shot.
Oh, it
Honorable.
definitely sounds like you had an open mind.
I did.
Yeah, yeah.
I went into it with a clean slate, you know, low expectations.
Yeah.
And I was still disappointed.
Wow.
But I do have Endorphins and Andrew to thank for showing me what an overpriced, shitty distortion module sounds like and pushing me in the direction to find a better alternative.
Oh,
But yeah, I'll get to the alternatives in a moment.
I'm very excited to hear those, but I'm also very excited to hear your experience. How long
So
did
this
you
is-
have it?
I
How long?
had Ghost for a week.
Okay, so that's a pretty long trial.
It
You gave it a
is.
shot. Yeah.
We've both ditched stuff in a day.
Yeah. I gave it a fair shake, dude.
Yeah.
I did. Like the first night, I wasn't that impressed with it.
Right.
Second night, like I think I received it on like a Friday or something. I messed with it and I was like, you know, it's like I'll dig deeper into this. Maybe I'm missing something. Spent the weekend with it, did a few patches. I think even posted an Instagram video. And it was like semi-satisfactory, but I realized like it was mostly because of the other modules that I had it involved with.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
so I tried to pick it apart, just piece by piece, learn each circuit, because I was struggling to figure out how all of these effects that it has work well with each other,
Mhm.
because they just weren't.
Right.
You know, if for our listeners' sake, like this module is like an all-in-one solution for dark techno, supposedly. It has a saturation circuit,
Mhm.
a DJ-style filter circuit, a compressor circuit, a reverb circuit, and a delay circuit. They're all supposed to work hand in hand to quickly and easily like dial in like a rumble kick or something to that extent. And you can change the routing of these effects. You don't need to manually patch one to the other. There's like 3 separate modes that you can bounce through. It changes the internal working of these circuits. On their own, each circuit was bad.
Yeah.
Like this is a module that does like a lot of things and it does all of them poorly.
Now, is the idea supposed to be that you're not intended to use them individually, that they are supposed to be the
That's what I
greater
tried to
than the
figure out.
sum?
I was
Okay.
like, okay, maybe on their own they suck, sure.
Right, right.
The magic is probably with them all working hand in hand.
Right.
A network, you know, of things to form a cohesive sound.
Greater than the sum of their parts.
It's like a human centipede.
Yeah. And I failed to get anything that I enjoyed out of it in that regard as well. Like, I jotted some notes down about each.
So real quick, are you sending drums through? Are you sending bass lines? Are you sending
drums?
Noise? Okay.
Mainly. I mean, I don't really do melodies. You know what I mean? And from my understanding of the module, this was meant to be something that you would process like your techno kicks with. Or percussion. You know what I mean? Things like that. They did
kind of sell it that way, I think.
Yeah.
Right. Anyone who knows anything about like producing that type of shit would look at the components of this module and say, oh yeah, that's all the shit that I typically do in my DAW, or that's all the shit that I wire up in my modular to get, you know, this sound. So it was all right there. Like, these were carefully selected effects. These weren't like flanger, phaser, you know what I mean? It wasn't meant to be a multi-effect. Like, this, as far as I could tell, had a pretty specific purpose. And so I tried to use it in that purpose, you know, for that purpose rather. And it just wasn't hitting it. Like, the individual components just didn't seem to like jive with each other. Like,
which is weird, because then I see that module, it reminds me of like the triptych a little, and I'm like, oh, this is like them trying to make like this thing,
a module that I do have,
works together,
and I've had for a while,
that you like,
and was a collaboration, mind you,
totally,
by people that like actually work with that style of music.
Basic Boys Noise.
I actually had that jotted down here in my notes, because I made that comparison mentally as well. I was like, this reminds me of the SSF triptych.
Right.
A collaboration with B2 Electronics, which most people, you don't even like think that, because it's not all that. It's not the main point of the module. Like, this was, the fact that this was a collaboration was kind of pushed to the forefront before anything else. Whereas like the triptych was not. It's like, it was an afterthought. Like, oh, by the way, this module exists because we collaborated with these producers who gave their feedback.
Right.
And also, I think it's Andrew from SSF generally makes like really solid circuits. Like, I love the SSF shit I've used.
Same. So I did try to keep an open mind. Right off the bat, I'll say I did not have noise issues. A few people I saw reported that on, you know, Mod Wiggler, that they were having noise issues. I didn't notice any noise. So in that regard, no complaints. But yeah, I just wasn't impressed with the module overall either. Biggest complaint, because that's the first and foremost part of this module, was the distortion, you know, the saturation circuit.
Right.
It just like completely lacked character, in my opinion. Like, the more you turned it up, the muddier and mushier like the sound got. It just, instead of like enhancing the harmonics, it just kind of like suppressed them. Like, this was not a good distortion circuit. I could think of many other preamps that would have been probably a better choice than however they had this going. Like, it just did nothing for me. So I was kind of just bypassing it. I was using the multitude of other modules I have as a preamp first to go into this thing.
Did you have shaping options for the distortion? Like, what are the what are the parameters you had for it?
On the input, you do have some shaping, which I thought was a nice touch.
Yeah.
There was like a tone control for like high pass, low pass. It was kind of like a pre-filter before everything else, which is nice. That I would like to see on more modules, for sure. But the saturation circuit itself I found just kind of lacking. I found better character out of the volume knob. If you cranked it past, like, I guess around like 5 o'clock or so, it would start to add like some fuzz to the top end. And that was kind of nice to get that going and then run it into the filter first. Like, it just gave you a little bit of crunch, whereas like the saturation circuit just lacked anything like that.
So what was the you were saying the saturation just
made it loud and smushy. Yeah, it just was not very good.
Is it analog? Or
I don't know. I know the triptych is mostly an all analog signal path.
I think so.
I highly doubt this is, because everything about it just kind of screamed like...
It's a reverb too, so it's probably...
The reverb was the absolute... like worse.
Maybe it is analog.
I don't know. Like before I go any further, let me point out that I did only have this for a week, and within that week, they released, I think it was 6 different firmware revisions.
Whoa! Were they bug fixes?
Bug fixes and changing the characteristic of the filter, of the delay, like a lot of things changing with it. So
Yeah.
I didn't install any of these. I didn't want to be
Right.
bothered. I was playing with this thing out of the box, fresh from release. I got it within 48 hours of it being officially released from Detroit Modular. So it was like,
Yeah.
fresh off the truck. Wanted to see what it had to offer. I did not want to be messing around with firmware updates at that point.
Yeah.
As someone who does QA, or has done QA quite a bit in their career, this is screaming. There was no QA.
Yeah,
Like, no one
6
tested this.
6 releases.
Especially like right after the release. Like
Yeah,
it was like, oh shit, we fucked this up.
Yeah. I don't know if it was a fuck up or if like other people just had some of the similar complaints that I did and brought it to their attention. I know in some of the patch notes, if you open it up in the firmware folder, it says like this was suggested by Andrew. Like after the fact. Like the last one, I think it was on November 3rd.
But why didn't they have those conversations
Beforehand?
the release?
That was what I was wondering as well.
I mean, he's a busy influencing.
But the reverb, yeah, like you only have 2 like main functions with it. You can adjust the pre-delay, which I do enjoy. I love fucking with pre-delay on reverb when it comes to percussive processing. So that was a nice touch. That, aside from the decay, is like the only options you have with this reverb.
Wow.
So since you're so limited, you got to make sure it's like a pretty decent reverb, right?
Yeah.
It's like, no, like the minute you tend to push it with anything percussive, it just got sloppy.
Does it have like options for material, like plate or cathedral
Nope.
or room
Nope.
size or anything?
Nope. It just kind of sounded like Cloud's reverb.
Okay.
With a pre-delay option, basically. Yeah, it wasn't very good, wasn't very clear. I noticed in the patch notes, in the most recent one on the 3rd, it said, added shimmer towards the end of the tail for more lushness. Again, I think you're just like misreading the intent of your own module at that point.
Right,
Like, why, if it's meant to be for percussive / techno processing, why would you want shimmer?
Yeah.
You would want instead, like you were saying, the ability to go through like hall, plate, spring.
I would be
things like
very shocked to get any kind of reverb that isn't the most like basic $5 guitar pedal that didn't have those type of options.
that. Right.
Especially with so much on that module, so much shit surfaced. I can't believe one of those isn't a toggle for at least 3 different.
It's because they
rooms.
dedicated so much space for the big stupid DJ filter knob on the top. Like,
Gotcha.
Oh, God.
it's like 25% of the faceplate is for the giant frequency knob for the DJ style filter, which I found to be very limited in range either. There was like 2 sweet spots that I found that I was happy with. The resonance didn't seem to like add or even take away from the resonance. It was just kind of like, maybe that changed in the firmware.
Yeah.
I don't know.
You have all the things to maybe skip too. Like Dual Dagger does a great job of that DJ style resonant filter. Like leave that out. Focus on the other stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
You know? It's all stereo too, right?
It's all stereo, and that was the main appeal
sure.
for me. Like, yeah. But upon messing with it, like, there's nothing you can really do with the stereo field anyways, and everything
Yeah.
coming out of it
Yeah.
sounded like mono anyway. So I was like, this is kind of pointless. Like, especially if it's meant to be a percussive, module. I don't know. I could see someone maybe getting enjoyment out of this thing as an end of chain processor, maybe.
Right.
But the delay was decent.
That's what I was just going to
I
ask.
did
Was
like
it
the
good?
delay.
Huh.
It had a wide range. It could go into like carpless territory or up to 2.5 second
That's cool.
length.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
It had a tone adjustment, so you could adjust like the brightness and the darkness
Ooh.
of it.
Feedback on it?
I don't remember.
Okay.
I want to say yes.
Hmm.
But I did have fun like CVing the delay. It could kind of get glitchy and
Oh,
stuff.
that's cool.
It was a neat circuit. The only one that offered like actual character out of
Yeah.
the whole thing. And then, at the end of it all, you have a compressor, which has no options. It's just one knob. And
For threshold? Is that all it, or like what was it? What did that knob control?
I don't know.
No, probably maybe a few things. Sometimes there's
I
one.
think it was a
Oh,
multi-function
multi-
one
oh,
knob. I
jeez.
think the more you turned it, the more it adjusted like attack, decay, or
gotcha.
release rather.
pre-built
okay.
ratio
Functions,
levels
yeah.
and shit like.
Jeez.
But again, it didn't have much character. Like I have a couple WMD muscle compressors, which are also stereo, and just 3 knobs, and you can get a lot of character out of that thing, a lot of gain, a lot of interesting results.
Well, I mean, that's also a focused module that they went out.
That's the thing. If you're going to release a module that is like supposed to be a Swiss Army knife, like an all-in-one solution, so that you don't go the route of like needing to get individual modules to do all the same things, like then it has to have some character to it, or at least be slightly comparable to some of the smallest modules out there that do similar functionality. You know what I mean?
Because it was also very expensive. It's big and
like
expensive.
It's like $500 module.
Oh no shit. Okay.
I want to say like $450, something like that.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
But it's not even like you're like, okay, someone out there who's starting out, they're going to save a lot of money by getting this instead of building their own signal chain. But you could put all of those modules together, smaller versions of those modules that do a better job for about the same price.
And that's exactly what I did.
Yeah.
I wanted to give it a shot. I mean, the thought is appealing. Have a stereo module, that handles all these things. You're saving space. You're saving money. You can reroute it internally without even having to patch cables. But at the end of the day, it reminded me why I like modular.
Yeah.
And because like it did not really cut it. And I'm like, okay, this is exactly why I went modular in the first place, to avoid these locked in the box,
bound together things
type of results. Yeah, that just weren't satisfying to me.
Or if they'd done some really interesting deep research and was like, this is the combination of things, and we came up with this network that was really interesting, but it needed to have all of these things in one box. If there was something truly novel about that interrelationship between the components, then it would work. It just sounds like they just threw 3 things in a box and good luck.
Yeah, and I love my distortion.
Yeah.
I would have been able to like justify keeping it if the distortion was interesting just alone. You know what I mean? Like that is it. If everything else was kind of like meh, I would have kept it on its own just for a nice stereo distortion. But like it just wasn't there, man. You know what I mean? It just did not cut it. Didn't cut it. Returned it to Detroit Modular after a week. And then used that money to get more interesting modules. And that is my ghost rant. I should have trusted my gut instinct and avoided.
We knew someone was going to have to get it.
Now you know.
Now I know.
Yeah.
I saw it with my own eyes. Had to learn the hard way.
Well.
And not to knock like Andrew Wang, like some of his YouTube videos I find amusing. Most of them I don't. But like, it's like if you're going to collaborate, why not stick to something that's your wheelhouse? You know what I mean? Like angry distortion, multi-effect, dark techno module. I think he might have stepped too far out of his own.
I don't associate him with
comfort
any
zone
of those
there.
words.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, and I saw some demos, like, all the influencers were using this thing for the first week of its release.
Right.
And I saw a couple like people using it in ambient patches and things like that. And I'm like, maybe using it in that regard, like in a subtle manner, it could work. But again, like if you have an ambient modular rig, you're probably already knowing what you want. And one of those things is going to be a nice reverb. And that is not what you're going to find on Ghost.
And at the very least, you want something with a lot of options, a lot of CV, a lot of modulation, a lot of choices.
Yeah. So I don't know who's going to like really enjoy this module. I'm curious to see like if it flops or if I'm, just preaching to the choir to other people that have already tried it and found themselves disappointed with it or on the fence about buying it.
For the most part, I've not seen a lot of videos with it. I mean, there's other modules.
I've only seen influencers,
yeah.
I haven't really seen people like passionately using this thing or putting videos out there showing what can be done with it in an interesting way.
Right. Well, thank you for stepping into the plate and taking one for the team.
Yes, sir.
Because I didn't want to have to buy that thing.
No.
Or
you did the research. Saved us the time and money. Speaking of disappointing things, why don't you hop into the Elektron Korner with me for a little bit?
Oh, let's step in.
Yeah, we've got some things to talk about today. We have a little robust Elektron Korner.
Did we ever come up with like a little jingle or something to like to introduce this like segment?
Maybe I could work on that. An Elektron only jingle.
Yes. Yeah. Oh. It's only with an analog 4.
No, I don't have one.
Yeah, neither do I. If anyone has an analog 4 and wants to make us a jingle,
Oh, yeah.
hit us up. we'll send you a koozie and a number 2 pencil.
Yeah. Some rolling papers if you want them, some stickers. But regardless, so I was getting ready for a live set and, doing the first half of that, which is system config usually for me, or at least at that point it was. And I was like trying to figure out what to use and got the bug up my ass to determine that an Elektron Syntakt was in my future.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was, been out for a little. I'd heard some samples and I was like, shit, maybe this is the thing. It's got a synthesizer in it. I'd descoped, I'd taken the modular out of my set, which I was very glad about. And that worked out really well, actually, because I was trying to get that to work and didn't really get where I wanted. And I was like, damn, this Syntakt can do what my rhythm does, and it could do synth shit, and I could take it out live, and it could be small. And yeah, got it one day back to, what was it? Sweetwater. Thank you, Sweetwater, for taking another return from me for no price. But yeah, for multiple reasons I got it. And it's maybe because I've had an Elektron rhythm for a long time now, Mark 1 and the Mark 2. And all the drum synthesis, there was such a great overlap for the rhythm. Like all the analog shit, I was like, well, this is identical to what I already have. They didn't really push anything at all. There was one machine, and I think it was like a conga machine or something like that. And it was okay, but it had this little range of sound. And first off, I hate the small size digiboxes, the 8x2 step ones. I am not a fan. That is not a pleasurable way to program.
Yeah.
It just doesn't work for me. They've focused on very cute graphics on these new things too, and
like Teenage Engineering OP1 style.
Yeah, very much style, as far as they can push the black and white display. And some of that is okay, and some of it was just distracting, and it was I see where your focus is when I'm using it. I would rather they push the sound design a little more, had more machine drum style drum engines. The FM things were the Model Cycles FM engine for chords and drums and shit like that put on there. And it doesn't sound good. Editing the chord stuff is this weird, it's a very cute graphic, but it is not something a musician, not that I'm that necessarily, but to figure out which chord I wanted to play was kind of a nightmare. Whereas on the Hapax, it's let me set it to major or minor and then pick harmonic or jazz or blues or something like that. That's how my brain kind of works. This was more scan through a bunch of different chord types, and the sound was really unsatisfying. I did not like the synth engines. The filters sound kind of similar to the rhythm, not as good to me. Not analog. Maybe they are. Either way, wasn't too impressed with it. Also, I realized too, only the Analog 4 and the Elektron Rhythm have the feature called direct jump, which means you can have a pattern playing, switch pattern. You can be on step 6 of pattern 1, switch to pattern 2, and it will start on step 7 of pattern 2. So you can really quickly go back and forth. You see any video of Derek Basek uses the hell out of this feature too to do cut up jungle breaks and things like that. It's just I need to work that way. I'm so used to the rhythm being able to do that, and this couldn't. It was always at the end of 4 bars or at the end of a bar, and it's that's kind of a bummer for me with a drum machine, something where I need to be able to make changes quickly. And I think honestly, they've just kind of fucked up their architecture by not having that be a feature on all their new shit. I don't see why.
I honestly assumed that it was.
I did.
I
forgot
didn't know
until
that it
I got
wasn't.
it.
Yeah.
And then I was oh, right. They couldn't
It's
do
real
this
simple.
on any of
It's
this.
simply just a shift and select the next pattern. It's not like you have to make another set of buttons or anything. It's pretty simple to set
I will
up.
say this gross armchair programming thing and be isn't it just a pointer to another memory location, which is how it works perfectly on the Analog Rhythm. It never fucks up. It does it just great. Analog 4 is the same way too. So I got this, and even the digi machines on it are so fucking bland for the most part. The kick drums sound pretty close to the analog ones, and there's just nothing that interesting in any of it. I don't know. There was just a lot of, for the price and the sound quality and the synthesizers being not that fun to use, and honestly, just like the dual VCO on the Rhythm, it just kind of fucking bored the shit out of me. If it's your first Elektron, yeah, it's probably a good pick. I'm spoiled by having used these things for a long time: machine drum, Octatrack, Rhythm, all these things.
That was going to be my main question for you. how does it stack up to the machine drum, which is pretty much impossible to
Not
get
even
these days?
close.
No,
Not even a shadow.
When I first saw it released, I thought that was my interpretation. I was like, oh, this is the machine drum Mark III.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Mono machine and machine drum shit in a box. I would still have it. I probably would have used it live because that stuff is unique. And like, even if you can't use the same code, I don't know why they can't like just try to remake some of those drums.
Right.
Kind of get like close to that would probably sound good just to try to get there just by ear or whatever. One cool thing about it is those modifier trigs. So it's like however many tracks, I forget how it breaks down, but you've got like 4 modifier trig tracks on the last 4. And those let you do things like drum rolls or like other changes to the pattern. And that I thought was like some good innovation on the sequencer.
So it's to the pattern, not the actual synthesis engine. Oh, okay.
Yeah, so
now, could you map them to like a parameter in the synthesis engine?
No, you can map them to different parameters within the sequencer engine. They're trig modifiers. So they're solely operating on that.
Okay. That seems like a little bit of a missed opportunity to not be able to take that and modulate the synthesis engine itself or parameters in it. Yeah,
it's a good idea, and I hope, like, again, we've said this before, I want them to get back to making full-size machines that are very playable. They've kind of come up with these small boxes that just aren't very nice to use, and they look like nice and tidy, and they're small for taking out to play live, but like, if you're used to an Elektron rhythm and you go to that, it is a big disappointment in ways. Or at least for me, it was. Having no like good drum pads, no scenes or parameter pads or anything like that. There's just a lot of stuff missing from it to me.
And that's the same form factor and buttons as the Digitac, right?
Yeah, like they're nice to like add to a sequence. Like I like them on the Rhythm Mark II and the Octatrack Mark II, which I'll talk about. But to play like for a pad thing, it just like kind of falls flat for me. It had another LFO that was cool. They had some other like incremental updates, but overall.
So the synth engine itself, could you get into like weird, like glitchy drums or weird, just sort of like space laser drums? Like how
a little bit.
Like what variety of drum sounds could you make with that engine?
Not like a strong variety, like I'm saying. Like you can maybe like it's very analog-ish. Some of the FM stuff you could twist a little bit, but the thing about the synthesis stuff and the chords and anything like that is that it ended up being so basic, like the FM parameters, or it's like their version of it instead of just like a regular like 2-op setup and give me some like classical controls over it. They try to like put this cute interface over top of it. And that just really I didn't vibe with that at all. I did not enjoy using it. Yeah, it was a very quick disappointment, actually. I just really wasn't into it at all. So that wasn't good. Sold it, but then eventually got back in bed with an Octatrack. It had been, I figured out, 6 years since I'd sold the Octatrack. I had one since it came out. It was a beta tester for it throughout the entire development of the operating system for the most part, except for the first few releases. Got really used to that thing to the point where I sold it because I was so sick of it and what it did. And then this live set, I was mixing with an Eckler Nuo 2 DJ mixer, which was great. And then just kind of weird moment, I was using the Rhythm Mark II, and I was like, man, I love how I can use this thing in the dark and there are LEDs under the buttons. And then I had this moment and I was kind of fucking baked and I was like, new Octatrack does that too. And I opened up this chat with Luke and my friend Gabo, and I was like, I don't think I'm going to do it, but I think I'm going to get an Octatrack. Went back to making my set. Go back to the chat. Both of them had purchased Octatracks in this 5-minute period, and they were like, when are you getting yours? Like, and it was like, holy shit. Like,
that's like a suicide pact.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
Like, you are now in.
All three of us got these from different places in the same day. Because it turned out the fucking euro to dollar conversion, you could get them from Thomann for like $12.50. It's a weird beast. I was really excited at first. I'm like, oh, it's got balanced inputs now. It has some new buttons and that shit. Like the new buttons are great. Like the UI is a little better. Same shitty sounding Octatrack as before. Like the quality and like it's kind of a bummer mixing pieces of gear through it.
So like the Digitac was the first one I think that had that sort of greatly improved sound engine or at the very least, the output sounded really good. That was made after that, right?
Yeah, and
So
it has
should've.
it can tolerate higher input levels, kind of, but it's still like the way it sums it or something. It's just like really kind of fiddly to get. Like when you A/B it against the mixer, it's like, oh, their frequency's just fucking gone.
Right.
You know, and for like a live set at Collision, I can roll with it, you know? Like
Take that, Collision.
Well, you know, for at any place really, like it'll work for like how much fidelity you're gonna get in a club for the most part. And the transition tricks, like I've been using the EasyBot template. He made this live performance template for mixing two pieces of gear, and that's what it's kind of. I'm using it kind of dumb, like just no patterns, just one pattern. Use a bunch of different parts with different effects that he has set up, and for transitioning, it's fucking magical. Like it's undeniable. Like you can loop this thing, fade over, your loop plays, introduce a new part, and cross back over. Like it opens up a lot of live performance stuff. You can overuse it, like any shitty DJ effect, if you do it too much, and it's like, oh, you're gonna like do the high pass thing again with the DJ filter. That's cool. But it does, that part is fun and sounds pretty good. Now I have like a 4 machine setup instead of 5. It's a little more compact. So in that way, it's a success. I have it mainly because I realized it's like riding this shitty weird bike once you get on it, and like all the muscle memory was there. Even when I was automatically like double tapping track to get the stuff, like shift up to get to the mute and the delay control stuff. Like it all came back. That was weird for not having it for 6 years, but in this like new version that looks kind of different, and I was like, this is just, it was tripping me out the first couple
Brains
of days.
are weird, man.
I put a lot of time into that thing back in the day.
You did.
A tremendous amount. So like it's nice. It's cool to like sample the modular. You know, I'm gonna keep it around just for that purpose. I don't know. We'll see how it works in this live set. It's made the cut so far. But it's more fun to mix with the DJ mixer. I just thought it kind of sounded better.
Yeah.
But yeah, Elektron Korner's thumbs up kinda on the Octatrack, 1 thumb up and 1 thumb like kind of sideways. 2 thumbs down on the Syntakt. Man, they should just make like, they'll make some digi loop someday or something like that. Yeah. It's just always so close but so far. But it's cool. Shout out to EasyBot for the performance thing. It works pretty well. It's a little overkill for me, but I'm tweaking it as I go.
Awesome.
Rehearsal for a live set shit today was cool. So it'll be fun.
I'm excited to throw tomatoes at you.
Thank you.
It's just kind of wild that you're back in the Octatrack fold, man.
Yeah.
I do. The new buttons are cool. The new it's beautiful. New hardware. The new like black one.
Yeah.
It's pretty slick. Good size. Again, it's like 16 steps and like the old Mark I chassis. It's like there was something kind of nice about these things. They just felt right to use. You know, I hope if they redo it, they don't shrink it down into that fucking box.
Right, man.
I forgot too that like I didn't realize that Elektron has been bought by at least one holding company since like 2016. So kind of like, I don't know who makes the decisions, but like other people came in and bought like 40% of the company.
Yeah.
So I think that's why they're
I'm really bad at paying attention to
innovating
shit
as
like
much
that
anymore.
Anything that has to do with business,
Yeah.
I don't pay close attention to. So, do you know who the secret holding company is that bought Elektron?
I forget.
The
I just
Illuminati.
read the name the other day. The Illuminati holding company.
Yeah.
And also they don't give me the beta tester discount anymore. So fuck you guys.
Yeah. Well, you're not beta testing anymore.
No, I'm not. I have not been a beta tester for many years since the Rhythm Mark 1 kind of stopped. I think they just changed their beta program or something, but that did get me a sweet Rhythm Mark 2 for a discount.
Nice.
Glad I got that.
Does that thus end Elektron Korner?
Yeah.
We haven't had an Elektron Korner in a
Been
minute.
Mm-mm. Hasn't been much Elektron stuff.
Yeah.
That's mostly no, actually I think it was mostly negative. It was 2 thumbs down and then a thumbs up and a thumb sideways. I think the net is just below a sideways thumb.
I do like having the Octatrack again. It's cool just to like, you know, have something. There's a lot of value in just knowing how to use an instrument too and being able to do stuff, and it's been fun.
Awesome. I'm glad you're digging it, and I'm glad it wasn't like you got it and then was like going back and watching a movie that you love from your childhood and being like, holy shit, this is way more racist and homophobic than I remember.
Vadeski mastering. VARESCHI mastering.com. I'm done with this project and it sounds bad. What do I do? How about Vareski mastering? Oh, cool. Philippe will work with you to get you where you want your sound to fucking go. VARESCHI mastering.com. Philippe will help you with your sonic issues.
Yeah. So I guess the only other thing on my list, and I don't have it with me, but I feel like I should talk about it because it's not big. I think it was a big release, a big deal. Qu-bit Nautilus.
Yeah.
I pulled the trigger, took the dive.
I resisted, and I was glad to hear that you pulled the trigger. I was like, good. I will wait and see the results.
So, I've been chewing on it a lot because I really wanted to come in here with a more concrete yes, no, thumbs up, thumbs down. I wanted it to be a little bit more binary. What I'm going to say is it's a lot of conditions. It's really wishy washy in a way that I'm uncomfortable. So it's for listeners who don't know what this is. It is a big delay network thing that Qu-bit has done, and it's all nautical themed. And it has this these sort of sonar controls that have manipulation over this eight delay line network that interoperates with itself, and it's got a lot of what you would expect out of delay circuit. It does the simple things simple, but it also has this complication. It's Qu-bit. They're going to add stuff to it.
Yeah, it's always going to be a shift button.
Well, it's funny because they even have a little thing. It's like no shift buttons this time, which is a lie. There's shifts. Like how you
serious?
Yeah, like how you set the input control and the reset is with a shift button. I was like, how did you not notice? How did the editors for this document not notice? You'll notice there's no shift. 2 pages later, there's a shift function, which is whatever. My complaints are going to be far deeper than poor documentation. A lot of the modulation is surfaced. You can CV a lot of it, and it has a somewhat unique output, which I believe is called sonar, is the output, and it's a stepped gate representation of what's going on inside the network, which was honestly probably the most appealing thing to me. Like, I don't go to delay lines that often when I'm working on things. It's something I go to, if I use it, I use it very sparingly.
Oh, interesting.
Very sort of like tight delays. So that's I was like, oh, maybe this is something that'll maybe open this up to me using these sort of more. I watched a bunch of demos on YouTube and definitely got a little bit of that, like, oh, these all sound the same. I hope this doesn't just sound like the one thing. I'm going to say that it sounds, you can get more out of it than what's on the demos, and what the sound is, and I guess this is on brand or on theme. It's very aquatic sound. It sounds like it's underwater. It sounds like it's sort of
whale song.
Yeah, it's sort of like the
dolphins mating in the spring.
Exactly, like the delay sounds like it's traversing through water, and it has this sort of like. I mean, I don't think they want people to use the word muddy. I think it comes across a little muddy, a little subdued. Just so much of the high end is just gone.
Plasticky.
Maybe that's the plasticky that you were talking about.
I'm telling you, man, all Qu-bit modules sound like plastic to me. I can't describe it, but it all has this plastic bucket characteristic that I can never ignore.
The Aurora was like that too?
Yes.
Yeah. I think
it was probably the least of Qu-bit modules that I've heard that had, but it still had that plasticky tone to it.
Yeah. I mean, and honestly, this is the first Qu-bit module that I bought and have like dove into. So, and there was a weird thing too, where there's a feedback knob and it goes to infinity, but
beyond.
But they even have a little note in the documentation that's like, don't worry, we've made it so that it doesn't get out of control if you hit it to infinity.
Yeah, like some sort of built-in limiter or whatever.
Yeah, it actually kind of just makes it useless. Honestly, it doesn't go to infinity. It doesn't go near. It just it. One of the analogies I kept coming back to when I was using this was, did you ever see some like kids learning how to bowl, and they fill the lanes with like
the bumpers,
bumpers,
bumper bowling,
so that you can't. That's the whole time I'm using it. I'm like, I feel like they just put these little bumpers around here, and everything's like that's not going to sound good. So we've cut that off. That's not going to sound good. So you can't do that. There's a lot of controls, and there's a lot of different modes for both. There's a freeze button with an input on gate and high. There's different modes for the different network configuration, and there's even like different feedback modes. But all of them feel like I'm playing bumper bowl, like I'm bumper bowling. I'm like, okay, let's step out, let's step a little outside of this, and it's like, no, that's as far as you're gonna go. It's very like that sound you're getting, and you hear basically when you start it up, you're gonna get there's variations and the different aquatic theme sort of controls outside of just resolution and reverse have this effect on this network, and they're so subtle as to be pointless. Like maybe if I was a very, very like in-tuned ambient fanatic who heard those sort of slight differences and I really relished them, this would be very exciting. But it was actually, I have jammed on these knobs and I've sent a bunch of CV and I've modulated the shit out of them, and it just sounds like
too preset and too digitally perfect.
Yeah.
Right?
And it's very nice. Everything I've sent through it sounds nice. Even just garbled nonsense or a sine wave or everything. And it's basically once it hits past that first tap, it immediately just becomes like, oh, here you go, you're soothing. Except, and this is a big except, there's a chroma knob, and it has the chroma is basically these different effects, or I don't think they use the word effects. It's basically different sort of operations on the network. They're all nautical named and shit. But like basically there's like a crush, there's these sort of like different, and there's a depth
Titan's Wang.
Barnacle.
So when you get to Titan's Wang, which is around 12, and there's a depth knob on it, all of them just like all of that low end that had been, all of the high end that has been buried under the sea, all comes to the surface and just is this icy, crunchy, no matter what the fuck you're sending it, no matter what you're doing, you turn that chroma knob and any of that depth, all it is, and that's it. Those are your two modes of operation with this thing. I've had it for probably a couple of weeks now, and I've given it a lot of chances because I really do want to like this. Those are the two modes, and the sonar is so obtuse. It's this idea that you have this like exposure to this complicated network. It's basically just a random step function.
Right.
It's not like you can use it and go, okay, cool, the network's doing this, and now I'm going to take that modulation and do something else with it, which is really what I wanted to do. I'm looking at it in the scope going, yeah, this is just fucking random as shit. It's
just random gates.
It's just it's random step values. It's fucking use.
I didn't realize it was stepped. I thought it was just gates.
There's a different mode. You can see in the online, the web-based settings page, which actually wasn't that bad. I was a little worried. I may have mentioned this in the last episode. I was really worried about the settings page being this web page thing. That was actually,
You're okay with it.
There's like 12 options. They're all super straightforward.
Yeah.
You put them in, put them on a little USB thing, you stick it in. That was actually that's one of the things I'm most positive about with this. One of them is you then change it to pings. You have these gates.
Gotcha. Okay.
These different gates. But the one that I was like, ooh, I want the stepped output. I want the secret sauce. I want the guts. I want them spilling out these guts. It's fucking useless. Fucking useless. The only thing, it's tempo synced. I'll give it that. But yeah, it's and massively disappointed. The other thing is, at the same time, like a day later, I got The Sound of Shadows from you, Nick. This is V3 from Flight of Harmony. It's everything I fucking want in a delay.
Yeah.
It's fucking perfect. Like
I figured you'd take to it.
Absolutely love it. So Nautilus is probably gone, and I'm probably gonna keep that. Its feedbacks and it's fucking gnarly.
Yeah, it's
Sound of Shadows
nasty.
is like a unfuckwithable classic on
It
my
is.
list of
Yeah.
delays. I feel like PT delay from Bug Brand
Yeah.
and Sound of Shadows are both like can't fuck with them.
I was a little worried because this is the V3, and but it's because the V2 is the bigger one, and
Yeah, it's
I was
got the VCA, the
Yeah.
extra VCA, which kind of doesn't.
it doesn't matter. This still sounds fucking amazing.
Mhm.
Huge thumbs up for like a 10-year-old Flight of Harmony module. If you were, and that's why I guess sort of circling back around to my like review of this is, there's probably people out there that are seeing these demos of Nautilus and going, that's what I want. If that is exactly what you want and you don't want too much variety from that,
Cyrus loves his.
fucking go for it. You will have it for days. I'm sure they're gonna keep working on it.
I like how I keep finding ways to work Cyrus in as a reoccurring character now.
We should have him on sometime.
We should.
I mean, we would have to
Because
bleep out
his perspective on modular is unlike any of us three.
I'm
That's
sure.
for sure.
Yeah.
Like,
And I'm not surprised to hear that he liked this. And that's not a dig at him at all. It really is just a different way of approaching it. And
it's exactly what he wanted.
yeah, it's very
Right.
hard to get into a bad sound.
Mhm.
Everything just sounds like, ooh, that's nice. Ooh, that's nice.
I wonder if someone could make a alt firmware where they take the bumpers off.
I think that would be astounding. Or even if they made something, even if they made a version of that was like, hey, listen,
I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, the Aurora already has at least one of their
Yeah.
firmware now from them.
and that's why I'm keeping it, honestly.
Yeah.
Like I'm going to give this a shot to see if they open it up a little, if it expands beyond this sort of very limited. And again, it's nice. Like I'm not that much of a dirt dog that I can't recognize that this is a nice sound. It's just fucking useless for me.
Take the bumpers off and create some sort of like BBD emulation to give it a little bit more character.
If that happens,
Yeah.
I will have a completely different review of that, and I will come back and I will be fucking excited for it. But until then, it's probably just gonna sit in a
Hear that,
box.
Qubit? We're just giving them away for free here.
Yeah. So I don't know. I wish I had something more concrete or definitive.
Yeah, it's a pretty good review.
Thank you. And that was it, though. That's really the alpha and omega of my list.
I have another bullet point on my list that encompasses a couple different modules, actually.
Oh.
Distortion. This kind of circles back, to use office speak.
Oh, so you're gonna start using distortion? That's cool. I mean, it's about time you started exploring the distortion options.
I've never looked into it before. I was like, it's time to try it out.
Always so safe with the levels, Greg. Always like, maybe a little lower.
So my complete disappointment of Ghosts as, a saturation module led me on a hunt for something new. I mean, I definitely have enough distortion modules, but I wanted more. I wanted to try something fresh, something good. So I dipped into a couple different things. First thing I dipped into was Schlappy Engineering.
I'm sure that's not how you pronounce that.
Schlappy.
I think it is. I don't know how else.
Schlappy.
I think maybe it's your accent.
Schlappy.
The way you're
Schlappy.
saying it is probably actually what's offensive. Yeah.
It's just how I read it every time I look at it, and it makes me laugh. Schlappy Engineering. I know everyone has the 100 grit.
Yeah.
And so I was like, you know what? That one gets a lot of attention. There's been plenty of reviews, YouTube videos of it. I was like, kind of wanted to dig into the lesser known stuff, the angle grinder and the Interstellar Radio. So I grabbed both of those. Angle grinder was interesting.
So wait, for our listeners who probably don't know it, I mean, like I think Sean Holt's the only person I can think of that had an angle grinder.
I think Dave does too.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. So this probably requires a little bit of an explanation.
Angle grinder, I don't really know how to describe it. It's like a quadrature oscillator that you can also route audio through, and it will function as a like strange wave shaper / distortion / filter, depending on what mode you put it into.
Weird.
But not like frequency, not like FM.
Sort of, yes.
Okay.
It's all based on like the frequency knob and the different like the 4 points where you have them. You know what I mean? It's strange.
Mm-hmm.
And I liked it. It was an interesting approach. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And like at the end of the day, if you don't want to use it as like a distortion, you can still use it as like a pretty interesting filter or an oscillator or even LFO. It has a mode to drop it into LFO mode. I haven't had like a quadrature LFO since IntelliGel's Dr.
Octatrack.
Yeah, Dr. Doc Ock.
Yeah.
So it's been a minute. And so I was having some fun with that. But ultimately, after doing some recording with it, I kind of moved on from it quickly.
So what was missing about it? Like is
nothing. It was kind of great, but it was big.
Love this.
It took up a lot of space.
Gotcha, yeah.
And it seemed like for processing, which was my primary reason of getting it, was distortion processing. It was like a lot of finagling just to get to the same point every time. It was like there was always like one spot where I'm like, okay, this sounds gnarly and good. It's not too much, not too less. You know what I mean? And it was like, that's a lot of module to kind of be like a one trick.
Yes, you were saying.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it just kind of like, I was always kind of happy with like the one spot where I would get the wave shaping and then filtered, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, this is too much space just for that, in my opinion. So I moved on from it. But if I had more rack space right now, which I don't, it's very tight right now, I would get one again for sure.
Yeah.
100%. And it makes me even more curious for the 100 grid now. And I think I'm going to have to try one out.
Yeah.
Because from the demos that I've heard, it is slightly similar. The 100 grid seems like it can be a bit more like off the rails, squelching and resonance and feedback. Which I forgot to mention, like the wave shaping, if I recall correctly, in the angle grinder is, feedback based. In some way. Yeah. It's a strange beast that I didn't fully wrap my head around. I just had fun tweaking the sliders and knobs and getting nasty results out of it.
And having fun, that's its own reward.
Yeah. The Interstellar...
You didn't seem to agree with me at all.
Well, no.
That was a very lukewarm...
No, it was.
Whatever.
It is important. Like, I don't like modules that aren't fun to use, and
same.
it was. For, I felt like you're exploring new territory with Angle Grinder. I couldn't really think of anything else comparative to compare it to, except maybe when you run audio through like a piston Honda and you're trying all the different wave shapes and things like that. Kind of reminded me of that, but with less variety, unfortunately. And the Interstellar Radio was cool.
What is that? I've seen people using it, and I've always been like, I should look up what that is. I never bother.
I can't explain what the hell it is. I can just explain like the type of sounds I was getting out of it. It basically sounds like you're screwing around with a like FM radio. You know what I mean? It's not an actual radio, which is why I didn't pay attention to it for a while. I thought the module was actual like a radio receiver. It's not. It just like emulates those sounds as you're combing through the frequency bands and things like that. It has like a carrier and a modulator and all that stuff. So I guess some sort of like mutant ring mod, I guess you could say,
ring mod
/ like noise generator. And it was pretty cool. Again, I kept getting to like one point with it and being like, I like how this sounds, and everything else would just kind of like be too much.
Could you send like a note sequence to it? Could you basically play it like an oscillator? Could you sort of?
I didn't use it as an oscillator much. I sure as hell never tried tracking with it. Like I just
did it have that on it? Did it have like a 1 volt per octave tracking?
I mean, it definitely has CV. I don't remember if it's 1 volt per octave.
Okay.
I was like kind of moving quickly. Like I had a bunch of different distortions that I wanted to try. These two were first on my list.
Fair enough.
I felt like I put them through their paces, gave them a shot. I was liking Interstellar Radio more as like a noise source and to use not only with percussion, but like as percussion. I was running it through low pass gate, things like that, making little percussive hits with it, metallic noise. It was cool. But again, not exactly what I was looking for or needed at that moment, you know? So I progressed from there to British Noise Electronics Grit Filter.
It's good progression.
Yeah, it was a big leap.
Real quick,
big leap.
Are all roads leading to British Electronics? I feel like you
Yes.
like that's where you end up.
It is.
You take these
Again
paths,
and
you
again.
and then it's like the television show where like there's like it's an on again, off again. Will they get together? But like by the end of the season, it's Greg and British Electronics.
They fucking nail it for me.
Yeah.
It's every time I go back to it. Like I had the Casfetta, the cascading FET amplifier.
Oh yeah.
I had that twice. Like first time I had it, I was like, this is great. But it's, it's just like, an amplifier, whatever. I already got amplifiers. I don't need this. So then I moved on to other modules, and then I was like, no, I kind of did exactly what I wanted, and it did it quickly. So I got it back, and I still have it now, and now I have a grit filter to pair with it. And grit is 100% what I was looking for.
Yeah.
It's not stereo, not
so you
super
just said
versatile.
100%, and then you immediately found a flaw.
Always a
I
flaw.
wouldn't say it's
So
a flaw.
99.5. Oh, it's not a flaw. Because I know you're really fired up for
choice.
Yeah,
It's a feature.
choice. Yeah, it's a
feature. Because I know you're fired up for stereo. Like that's been like your thing for a long time.
Yeah, and I've just kind of given up on being able to do anything that I really love that is like distorted stereo field shit that isn't an overstayer modular channel.
Yeah.
at this point.
Gotcha.
So I've learned to compromise.
I see. So it's 100% within the sort of compromised view.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I overlooked the grit for a while because I was like, I don't need another filter. You know what I mean? Like I have tons of filters, tons of dirty filters.
Yeah.
Simple too.
It's super
Relatively
simple, which is another reason why I kind of overlooked it. I was like, it's too
I
simple.
almost got it too, and I'm like, I've got filters.
I would say get one.
Yeah.
Like,
I've always I think their stuff is beautiful too, and
I
it
love
just
the gunmetal
sounds good.
panels.
Dude, it looks so good.
Yeah. The sound of it, the distortion that you can achieve with it, exactly what I was looking for. It goes to 11.
So for our listeners, can you give us an overview? It's a filter, but what other options does it have?
Not much, dude. You have a
Oh.
toggle switch to switch between low pass, high pass mode. You have a limiter at the input, which I am loving.
Oh, cool.
It doesn't give a whole lot of gain. I think it's only like a plus 2.5 gain or something
That's
like
not
that.
a lot at all. Yeah.
But it's enough to make that limiter just give a little extra character. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
and it interacts with the resonance just by pushing it that much further. So you can get some really interesting, harmonics out of the filter by just smashing that limiter a little bit.
I like that.
And then it has a grit button, which has two different functions, I think. I can't remember exactly which. I think one is like pre or post filter grit or something
Yeah,
like
I think
that.
so.
And it's great, but honestly, like I can achieve distortion that I really like even without it. Like it's a nice extra oomph sometimes.
Is it like just in the high end? Where like what is the grit doing?
Yeah, it's definitely adding some sizzle to the top.
Gotcha.
And then it has a knob that is parallel, or I'm sorry, is it parallel saturation or serial saturation?
Forget.
I'm having a brain fart.
Yeah, same
Yeah,
here.
I don't know.
Either way, it's like a nice saturation knob. And it's just strange. Like it's hard to describe the characteristic of it. It's almost like there's, to the best of my knowledge, there's no like delay circuit in there, but at times it kind of feels like there is one. Like it's kind of like feeding back on itself.
Like
in
starving
some ways.
almost.
Not starving, but just kind of like going into itself in some way. Like at high settings, it's adding like some interesting character. Maybe that's just the resonance at the proper spots, self-oscillating. But yeah, it's brutal. It's unforgiving. It's just 3 knobs and 2 toggles, basically.
Yeah.
It exactly served the purpose that I was looking for.
And you posted a video on your Instagram recently using
yes, I
it.
did.
Yeah.
Sounded, I don't use this word lightly. That sounded brutal.
Thank you.
That was absolutely astounding. Yeah.
It's clicking with me. Like a lot of times with distortions, I have a sound in my head and then I try to replicate it and I struggle to do it because I can't find the right distortions. You know,
Yeah.
the moment I installed grit, I was like, That's it. Like that's what the fuck I was going for.
So you're only going to sell it and rebuy it 2 more times?
I don't even think that would be possible.
Really?
Yeah,
So-
it might be hard to get.
That's I was gonna say, like, if you want a grit filter, grab it now.
Yeah.
There's only 2 in existence right now that are for sale at a non-insane price.
Oh.
Signal Sounds at the time of this recording has 2 left.
Okay.
For $350 new price. On Reverb, you can get them for around $800.
Jesus.
Even though they're still available new,
Yeah.
they're around $800 on Reverb.
That's some speculative pricing there.
Yeah.
The cascading Feta. The cascading
You said
FET
it.
amplifier. I just love
Delicious.
saying Cas Feta. It sounds like a delicious
It's
cheese.
good.
I would absolutely fuck that up.
Yeah. The Cas Feta is going for one of them was for $1,900,
Oh my god.
but they dropped the price to $1,600. So if you want to get it on sale, now's the chance.
That's a bargain.
Yeah. No, I think that costs $300 new, 400 max, so
Yeah.
somewhere between 3 to
Jesus
4.
Christ.
Yeah, and people are trying to flip them now for like 4 times, 5 times the price.
Cool.
The I don't even remember the name of the other module. It's the only one that I don't have that I really wish I did. But
The first one.
yeah,
What
their
was it?
first release,
Gain stage amplifier.
Gain Stage Amplifier. Yes, thank you. Those are going for like $2,000 as well. Yeah, if they even pop up. I don't see any last I looked. I don't know if they're done.
Done?
Yeah,
Oh.
like, so the website's been dead for about 3 months now.
Oh. fuck.
Yeah, and it's starting. That's why the prices have been creeping up, because
No.
it's starting to become apparent that like maybe he's done.
Yeah.
Ansem hasn't made any official announcement. But yeah, website's been dead. There's been nothing new on Instagram since the release of the Cas Feta.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think a lot of people are speculating that like the ones that are out there are all that's going to exist. I hope that's not the case. I mean, when I spoke to him very briefly before the release of the Cas Feta, he said that like the Cas Feta might not come out until 2023.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. Thankfully, that didn't happen. He managed to get some parts and made a few. But I don't know what the situation is now with the other modules. Like
Right.
that might be it. So
That sucks because I know he like basically quit music to like work on electronic stuff and like
I hope he continues on with
I
it
hope so,
because his
too.
shit is killer.
yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think there's a lot of people out there that needs a filter to go to 11, but those that do need it, you know, like
Yeah. Yeah.
it nails it. So it's like,
Yeah.
you know,
And he hits like right for new builder right out of the gate, like pretty fucking strong showing.
Yeah.
You know?
yeah,
Like
absolutely.
3 kind of killer modules.
I mean, it's kind of a spillover across all 3, you
Mhm.
know what I mean? But they all have enough differences that I would gladly have all 3 in my rig,
Yeah.
you know,
Is it just him doing it?
as far as I
I
know.
believe so.
That's pretty impressive. Yeah.
I think he even hand builds them. I could be
Oh,
wrong, though.
wow.
Yeah, I think so. Because that one really interesting interview that he did when he talked about like switching to more electronic stuff, less touring, and also was saying like he stopped using the Akai Force and was like switching over to the bit boxes for like live stuff, and he was going to work on a new live set. And that's the last thing I saw from him.
Mm.
Not that I've like exhaustively searched, but
I mean, everyone's suffering trying to make money touring. It's
yeah. Oh, it's impossible.
So yeah, my quest for a new distortion went full circle back to British Noise Engineering,
all paths lead there.
or British Noise Electronics rather. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I keep screwing up the name.
Me too.
Sorry, everyone.
And I did have a rediscovery of how much I love TRSHMSTR.
That black panel does look sweet.
It looks great. I had 2 before that I upgraded the panels for
Oh yeah.
on my own, yeah.
Hmm.
But then I was like, you know what? I've been, you know, it was just kind of like I got sick of it. Like I was using
Yeah.
the TRSHMSTR to death. I had 2 of them. I was like, you know, this thing's great, but I've recorded a lot of shit with it. I don't need these anymore, taking up space, and I sold them. Now I have 2 in my rig again, and now the WMD is, you know,
Yeah.
closing up shop. I don't think I'll be getting rid of these ones again.
Yeah. I think not.
I got 2 of them sitting right next to 2 muscle compressors.
Tight.
Oh, nice.
They go
yeah.
very nicely together.
Yeah.
Very nicely.
So, do you need us to like intervene if you ever think about selling one of these? How do we stop this endless cycle?
The only way to stop it is to make the company go out of business. because then I don't have the
I see.
option to get them back later.
Gotcha.
Like,
Yeah.
there's too many times where I've been comfortable selling stuff because I'm like, well, if I need it again, I'll just get it again
That's
later,
fair.
secondhand. And like, thanks to 2022 being 2022, that's
Right.
not like an option anymore. And
Yeah.
I'm just learning to be like, okay, I'm putting more thought into my purchases, and I'm trying to keep what I have and make sure that what I'm buying is something that I really need and want.
Right.
That's why I won't sell my FX8 XL, even though I have the 4 HP and then the Pro, and I just use those two because I'm just worried, like, oh, one of those is going to break, and like,
Yeah.
it's based out of the Ukraine too. Like, it's talk about uncertainty. Like,
Right.
I mean, I hope they keep cranking stuff out, but obviously,
Are you ready to talk about the Trinity?
I am.
Because it's
Yeah.
sitting here. It's in a for our
I
listeners.
actually wanted to talk about that first, and I got sidetracked by all the other stuff.
Yeah.
No, it's been an
Whoops.
exciting, action-packed episode. So I'm looking at this, and the way you've presented it, I don't know if it was by accident or not. It looks like a glamour shot.
Like an unveiling. Kind of is, dude. I mean, this is the MODBAP Trinity. I've had it since this afternoon, and I spent my entire lunch break playing with it.
So there are, for our listeners, there are somewhere around 5,000 jacks.
yeah, there's a good array of them there.
Yeah, and some toggles, and very nice printing. I really like the way the panel looks. I know nothing else about this module.
This is a drum module. 3 drum modules, in fact, all pressed into one
Oh, wait,
module.
is this the one you were talking about last episode?
Yes,
Yeah.
sir. And I said, hopefully I'll have it by next
Gotcha.
episode. And it arrived in the nick of time this afternoon. So that worked out well. But yeah, this was the one I was hyped for. I mean, I haven't spent a whole lot of time with it, obviously, but the time
Yeah,
that I
yeah.
did spend with it, I was like immediately in love with it. Like, this is.
Is that a teensy on the back? Like
It
'cause-
is.
Okay, yeah. Just so it's a pretty big module, but on the back there's a daughter board. Looks like a teensy and a lot of SMD parts on the back.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's only got, what? That's 6, 10, 11 knobs, but tons of buttons and a hell of a lot of jacks, 3 dip switches. It's basically the drum module I've always hoped would exist someday. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
it's not samples, it's
Right.
drum synthesis. You can have each drum be whatever the hell you want.
That's nice.
It's not
Yeah.
forcing you to do
This is a BD. This is a snare.
hat. Yeah, no, it's if you want 3 kicks, you got 3 kicks. You want 3 different hats, you got 3 different hats.
Which is exciting because I know in the past we've talked about the fact that the 3 of us are not single bass drum music.
Yeah.
all of us have
Usually,
a
two,
variety of them
at
in the
least.
same song, even.
in fact, the sole purpose that I got this module for was pretty much to be a triple bass kick module.
Yeah.
Like, I have other, modules to handle percussive sounds and snares and things like that. I could do them on here if I wanted, but that wasn't the main appeal to me. This was mainly going to be like handling kick and bass duties, which sound amazing. Like, it has some serious pitch range. I was very impressed by it. It can pound. It has on board, and this is all per drum, mind you.
Mm-hmm.
You hold shift, and then you hit 1, 2, or 3, and that's the drum you're now editing.
Oh, that's really clever. Yeah.
So, and you can stack them. By
Wait,
the
what
way.
do you mean by
Okay.
stack?
So
Like
I
layer
didn't play with
style.
that, but yeah, you can layer all 3.
So you got some Magic the Gathering cards there.
Yeah, it came with some Magic Gathering cards. It's pretty cool. Trinity Stack has 3 modes. Off, where only one drum will be selected and play out on channel 1. Other drums will play on their defined channels, 2 and 3. 2 Stack, drums 1 and 2 will be selected to stack and play out together on channel 1. Drum 3 will be on its own channel. And then there's 3 Stack. 1, 2, and 3 will be selected to stack and play out together on channel 1.
And by stack, is that just mixed? Or how's it like? What is
I'm
stacking?
assuming, like,
Sort
one
of. You
gate
hold
would trigger.
shift and turn shape to spread the stacked voices.
Oh, that's
So
fucking
this is
cool.
like
different.
you can make a triple layered kick
Yeah.
that you only need to,
Gate once.
manipulate once and gate once. Yeah.
Huh.
When the voices are stacked, a single trigger received on channel 1 will activate
Okay.
all the stacked voices.
That's fucking awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Now, that's stack mode. It also has cycle mode here, which has 2 different modes. 3 modes. Off, on, which is the blue mode, which is random. Every time that drum receives a trigger, it'll go through the 4 different drum modes at
Nice.
random. So if you wanted like the analog simulation, the FM, the arcade noise, you're bouncing between them. So you essentially do like a full drum set on a single channel.
Right.
And then the third mode is round robin, same thing. You know what I mean? So like per trigger, it's going to select the next mode over and over.
Oh, gotcha. I see what you're saying. So it's not random; it's cycling.
Yes. I was playing with that mode because that was the mode that I was least interested in. And then on my lunch break, I was getting some really cool rhythmic noise out of it.
So, and the drum sounds themselves are, I assume they've got beef.
They got beef. And you can add beef to it. There's a clipper knob over here if you want to push things into like clipping distortion territory. There's also a grit knob over here, which is some sort of saturation. I didn't read the manual to see what it's emulating, but it was nice. It was beefing some stuff up. That's for sure.
So you got these knobs, and you say you select the different modes, but are the jacks dedicated to each of the different drums?
They are.
Yeah.
Okay.
You got your 3 different lanes here. So even though like you can only tweak a knob one at a time depending on the mode, but you can CV all of it, and it's going to do it in the background for that voice, which is awesome in my opinion.
Love the design.
The design is solid. Yeah. Originally, I wanted 2 of these. I don't even know if I would need 2, honestly. At this point.
Wow.
Like,
That's cool.
I can see getting a lot of mileage out of 1.
Right, right.
Maybe down the road I can get a second one when I have more funds at my disposal. But right now, yeah, I see myself doing a lot of recording with this.
Yeah,
you know what
that's
I mean?
awesome.
Each drum also has like its own filter, basically. Like it's the EQ knob. I noticed to the right it's more of a high pass, left more of a low pass, center you're kind of like neutral, which is pretty cool too. You have your sweep and time knobs, that's for pitch modulation. You have your hold and decay knob over here.
Oh, so it has its own envelope.
Yep.
I love the kind of mixing options on the output where you can do it like individual or send it to the mix or like.
That was super appealing to me as well because I love doing like different layered submixes. Yeah, you can have each thing going out of its individual channel, flip the switch to have it go to the sub out or both. So you can have like each drum voice processed individually on its own and also a submix coming out of the mix knob to some other processing, which is pretty nice.
That is that's awesome.
I didn't know until a couple weeks ago that MODBAP stands for like modules that are good for boom bap and other like dance performance oriented stuff, and that's Corey Banks' focus with it, and they're a black owned modular synthesis company. And that's not too common.
Pretty rad.
Yeah, it's awesome, and they're killing it on the design. Like I'm way more interested now after hearing your explanation of this and all the stuff it can do. That's a powerhouse right there.